I mean, they had down there a sort of what we would know today like sort of like a hadron collider in order to create the time-space continuum disruption that they needed to connect with other dimensions.
This is a delta T antenna. How do you make a delta T antenna? It's easy.
Well, Jimmy Payne, I think he said there's like 26 sub-projects under Project Phoenix, and it's my belief many of them are still active.
Our ages have been messed with quite a bit, both regressed and progressed. So we've been reverse aged and we've been artificially aged as well, going both directions.
That was also on site. So you already have numerous buildings with undergrounds, and all of the places that they say do not have an underground, like even a basement, they deny. They deny anything. They actually say like the radar is just sitting on the dirt with no basement at all.
Here it is in 1990 when I meet Preston Nichols in Long Island, and he is giving a lecture, and I'm there to meet him because he's a prolific inventor. I don't know anything about his detail or his life or about his time travel adventures or alleged time travel adventures, and I listen to this story that he's talking. He's on a panel discussion with some other people. And there's other people there who were involved in his life and his time travel projects.
All time coexists, and it's possible to go from point A to point B if you can find the path to go directly from. Some people believe it's taking the linear timeline, bending it over next to each other, and creating a wormhole or a punch through from time A to time B.
But basically, he was talking about a whole implant station at Montauk, New York, which is at the eastern end of Long Island, also known as Camp Hero, an old military installation, including it was an Air Force station. So he's talking about using electronics to control minds, and then also using it to open up abilities to control minds and to amplify the mental transmissions of an individual in what they call the Montauk chair, so as to change space and time. So what he was saying was a modern day implant station that was in direct harmony with what L. Ron Hubbard described in more abstract terms in the 1950s. And here it was, not on a planet in outer space somewhere, as Hubbard discussed or alluded to, but it was right here on planet Earth. And they were also controlling time. And it was such a compelling story to me. I wanted to know more about it. I said, is there a book on this? And no, there was not a book. And I staked out those lectures that he would give twice a month for about 6 months before I decided it was okay for me to collaborate with him and write a book on this subject, which was quite an adventure in itself.
And thus, the story of the Montauk Project was thrust into the minds of the general public. Prior to the release of the Montauk Project Experiments in Time, one would need to attend a lecture led by Preston Nichols, the chief engineer of Phoenix 1, 2, and 3, to garner any knowledge involving this nefarious undertaking by the Air Force and some outer faction of a shadow government. Today, the original whistleblowers have passed, leaving us with far more questions than answers. We turn our attention to the survivors of this project some claiming to continue to serve unwillingly in subsequent endeavors, and others recalling their participation in the original location at Camp Hero in Montauk. Though trauma from these experiences will always be addressed, we are at a point where healing is now possible for those who had no choice but to be indoctrinated and endure such a hellish experience.
Obviously, Preston Nichols is the most popular account that the most people have access to. Like most other popular accounts, it's very whitewashed, you know. For Preston personally, it makes him look a lot better than he was ethically, a lot more together psychologically. He was pretty deranged. I mean, most of us were at that time, so forgiveness, but...
Did you see him there?
I did, yeah. He was one of my bosses, so, yeah.
Did you see Al or Duncan?
I did. So a lot of my experience aligns with what's been published in the broadest terms. You know, on the broadest points, there's usually alignment. When you get into the more personal and specific experiences, obviously those get much more subjective, much more personal by definition. My personal hero on base was Duncan Cameron. Of the adults, he seemed to me to be the most sane. He was the kindest to me, and so he's the one I have the fondest memories of. And there are, I mean, you know, that could be another conversation talking about him and all that, but he was really a light worker consciously, and most of his soul was quite present.
Some years ago, James Rink traveled to upstate New York to visit Preston Nichols with an experienced film crew by his side. With the intent to understand his role in the Montauk Project, James was subjected to Preston's experimental vibration therapy, which allowed him to enact a series of techniques that would help determine if the subject was indeed part of the program. I asked James about this experience, as Preston confirmed that he was involved in the project, and warned James that many Montauk boys were programmed to, at best, take their own life around 30 to 35 years of age, and at worst, take all those around with them as well.
I want to start somewhere that I think most of us can kind of refer to, and that was a little documentary that you put out, I think it was maybe between 2013 2016, whatever it was, where you went to visit Preston. And the highlight for me in this was that you actually had an opportunity to sit down in that sonic bed that he had created and go through an experience with the music. So before we come to the result of that endeavor based on Preston's analysis, what was that experience like for you, going up to visit him and then sitting in that bed and going through the experience with the music?
Sure, yeah, thank you. I visited him in 2013 up in Cairo. It's right just south of Albany, New York. So he had this laboratory there. So Preston is like this mad scientist. His IQ is like off the charts. And he's autistic, but he doesn't really take good care of his hygiene. But what I can say is, I did sit on the bed. It creates this vibration, which allows you to, it vibrates your own, your crystals in your own pineal gland. Creates what's called the piezoelectric effect within your own crystals. When they vibrate against each other, it can open up portals ideally. But when I was sitting on the bed, I was noticing that I just felt like I was flying away outside my body, and I don't really remember where I go. But so as far as Preston confirmed that I was a Montauk bully. He has his technique, his own psychic scanning that allows him to determine that. But my other guy that was with me, Dan McBowen, they also scan him. Dan McBowen's in Project Zeta, Diogenes, and Sonic Monster. I'm not going to go into it, check out, do a search for his name, but he was not. So, and I also got to meet Duncan Cameron. So I went to his house in Long Island. He had a house right on the bay there. And so he did a session where he would look at me, he would walk around me, I sat in a chair, and he'd walk around me and told me to look at him from different angles. And then afterward, he went out into the bay and he touched his finger into the water, and ripples formed from that spot all over the pond. And something he did with different timelines was altered, but that's all I know. But as you know, Preston and Duncan are no longer with us, and yeah, so that aspect of the project, the original Montauk Project, is no longer with us, but there a lot of the participants, the children, are still alive, and so it is my belief that I was there. I do have some memories.
Okay.
Thank you. I think. I feel dizzy.
Stay there, Mara. Stay there, Mara.
Oh.
Yeah, you want me to talk in front of you about you?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, we did work at Montauk.
So Preston, he was in Montauk? You know him from there?
Mm-hmm. So he was about 10 years of age, 10, 12, over a 2-year period.
So that's 1990, 1992?
Something like that, yeah.
You were there then?
90s.
And that's when I started getting
He
flaky.
came in through the federal facility, the federal radio facility in Nutley, New Jersey.
Within coming off of that bed, Preston again affirmed that yes, you were part of that, and he worked with you, and you started on a line of inquiry going into the understanding of what that actually entailed. But we're sort of derailed when Preston mentioned that there's a programming that goes into some of these boys wherein around early 30s they off themselves, and this is put into the program. And watching that, it felt like obviously you had concern for this, possibly coming up on that age at the time. Regardless, that's kind of where the conversation went. Now, some years later, what are your thoughts on that prophecy, if you will?
Preston, he still has needle marks and still has missing time. He's still being used.
Yeah, I get needle marks on a daily basis.
And how old are you?
I'm 33.
You just get near the end. The end of the expected life. Your biggest danger is you may have a suicide program. That's what they like to do. Once they muster out the Montauk boys at about 32 to 35, they like to have them kill themselves.
How can we create a new program for that?
We have to get that program out.
How?
There are ways to do it.
How? What can we do to save his life?
I mean, would I black out and then the I guess you could say an altar would take over and just end it? I wouldn't
Very
even.
possible. I'd have to research much deeper into it.
But, so Omega is the self-destruction altars. Now, my understanding is that at least some of the children, not all of them, were ascended machine technology, meaning that we are for me, I'm above the archangels, the super archangel. I'm creator source energy, so I have the ability to create. So they just can't really plug that Omega stuff in, because what happens, we can transmute it all, and we end up transmuting certain aspects of the program to eventually got shut down. But from my memory side of it, that certain sub-project, rather, I should say. So, but if you're not doing the spiritual work, like for instance, I grew up from a very Christian background, and for me, it seemed like another layer of mind control to keep you from expanding out. Well, why am I getting these needle marks, and why am I having this missing time and bloody noses? Cannot be explained in the pulpit, so or the pew. But so I decided to expand out of that, and that's why I don't think Omega got triggered inside of me. If you don't do your own spiritual work, you will. It's possible you will self-destruct.
If there are any consistencies you find amongst, survivors that claim to, in one way or another, been there, what would those look like?
There's a consistent pattern of abuse and torture for dissociation and programming because of this seemingly insane and I think inefficient need for compartmentalization in the programs. And the compartmentalization is probably there mostly now for them to protect their asses, the main perpetrators running the show. There's common themes of the technology that's being done. I mean, you know, it's one thing for one person to come up with a 20 and back, you know, time travel, Back to the Future thing, but for multiple people to talk about 20 and back, and then for them to start getting more and more detail with as more survivors come forth, speaking about doing multiple 20 and backs and the technology behind that, combined with the mind wiping, combined with parallel universes, you know, it's a lot to wrap my head around. Yeah.
What's 20 and back?
So that's where they can take you for 20 years. So literally, they can kidnap you, and after 20 years, they can take your consciousness and then transfer it back to the point where they kidnapped you. And by doing that, you basically get to be their slave for 20 years and then come back none the wiser for it. And then they can kidnap you again. So it's kind of like a Groundhog Day / Back to the Future, you know, abduction scenario.
Oh wow, feel the fucking cold air coming out? This is just like that battery 216, the hole before I told you about, except it was blowing out like way stronger.
Oh shit.
You gotta feel this air. Coming straight out of the bunker.
So this is battery 216, and this is the first place I ever ventured into the base through a hole in the wall right here. It was this hole about this size in this wall behind here, so big enough for us to fit through as kids. We didn't have any flashlights or anything, so we went straight through to the other side, holding onto the walls for light, just to feel our way. And when we got to the other side, we had to make a decision to cross over a hole in the floor that went from one side of the wall to the other. So the only thing for us to step on was a little piece of rebar like this. And then as you get close to the other side of the hole, our friends would grab our jacket and pull us the other way. So when we got to the other side of the hole safely, we picked up like a piece of cinder block, like a chunk of concrete about this big, and dropped it down the hole, and it went like 1, 2, maybe 3 seconds and hit water. So it was like 3 stories, maybe 4 stories deep. And later on, I had found out from many people that they've been down there. On the blueprints, this bunker ends right here on this wall and goes all the way down. But if you look at the hill on the side of this bunker, there's plenty more of this hill. And what they described was going down staggered layers on the other side of this wall, down into that lower area. So most likely originally for World War II was like an ammo storage where they had an elevator to lift up shells. But later on, they tried to turn this into a Nike nuclear missile base in 1965. So they were repurposing it for other things. The last thing I heard that they actually did here was the Navy SEALs and Navy, some kind of other Navy branch. Together we're doing an exercise here in 1970. I don't know why the Navy was using Army property, but the only thing I could think of is that something down there connects out to the beach. Now down on the beach, Danielle found some bluffs that were like cement instead of clay. They seem like fake bluffs. It's possible that this was an entrance to the beach, on the beach level, through this bunker down and onto the beach. And the thing that ties it all together, there was a windmill right here, a house, by Lathrop Brown, who was Franklin Delano Roosevelt's best friend, Harvard roommate. And he was the chief of the Navy, the head of the Secretary of the Navy at that time. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt would come right here and hang out with him when he got polio. He was recovering here. And who knows what those two cooked up. I mean, both heads of the Navy, they could have easily made something like this that goes out to the beach at the time. So that's my theory. All I know is that there's a deep underground here. This is the first place I was ever inside of it, Camp Hero, and it's also one of the most least well-known about bunkers on the base.
As far as the underground tunnels at Montauk, in Montauk, Long Island, I have never heard whether the tunnels are underground. But I mean, just according to rules of common sense, I would believe that they would have to be.
It's open for a while. Yeah, there's a room under here. And there's a room in this building you could go underground. And this goes 4 stories underground.
To have that level of activity hidden from the public in general, I mean, it would seem that it would have to be underground, in underground labs, especially when you're thinking about the volume of things that they were doing down there. I mean, they had down there a sort of what we would know today, like sort of like a hadron collider, in order to create the time-space continuum disruption that they needed to connect with other dimensions. So that would have been an extremely large space that they would have needed. And at the same time, they also had facilities where they were keeping children and prisoners and experimenting on them and their abilities. And that absolutely happened.
Yeah, it's open.
Hey, can you mind running the flashlight over here for a sec? Oh, it's all filled in with water.
Oh shit, flooded. Yeah, so there's a basement right below this. Because I got a picture below those springs right there, looking up at those springs underwater.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I got a picture of right there. You see the big yellow spring? In my picture, I'm looking up from the bottom of that. That's pretty cool. But there's a way to get in right around the corner, behind the stairs. There's red grating. See, through that wall on the other side, this is where the red grates, and the floor might go up to the, down to the basement, I mean. I'm gonna take a quick look.
Yeah, let's take a peek.
I guess in this room. I got no light.
I'm freaked out because of that thing we found in your video.
Can I use one of them?
What?
Just to point.
Oh, God, that's the only one I got. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I kind of freaked out looking. Look at all that.
That's my bags.
Oh shit! Yep. This is the way of the fucking basement. All these years, I never fucking knew until I saw the pictures the other day. These are the red grates. I was just telling you, there's a ladder that goes down into the lower floor from the real estate photo.
I wonder if it's flooded on purpose.
Yeah, it is. That's what they say.
Can you give me a quick shot up?
Reflection. I don't know. Here. Yep.
Yep. So you get the cords.
Wow, cable. Wow.
These are photographs taken in the basement of a Sage radar tower before the one in Camp Hero was intentionally flooded. As you can see, there is certainly a facility here, with a hole in the floor suggesting the structure may reach even further into the earth.
Brian, tell me a little bit about the purported underground, your belief as to why it may be there, the way that people have talked about it, some of the evidence that you come across in respect to not only utilidor tunnels, but a deeper underground. What are your thoughts on this? What's your research led you to?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I guess starting from the top, I wanted to rule out where known things are. So start with the topmost things like the sewer lines, which is not fun, but you know that there's something else not there. Then for other deeper structures like water and stuff, they couldn't be where the sewer lines are, they'd have to be elsewhere. So you put them, they're obviously above or below. I started with the top layers of everything, and then deeper, we have World War II structures that we know are they're built like cookie cutters. So California, San Francisco, can't say the exact place, but there's a video on YouTube, and that's the exact same tunnel system. They built these things like, templates, by the template, and by the hundreds. And so you'd go down a staircase in the back of the 16-inch gun battery. You have 2 of those at Camp Hero. And you go down a staircase, which is now you're 30 feet below ground. You go 500 feet through a tunnel, and then you climb a ladder that's 30 feet up onto a platform where there's another ladder. But keep in mind, now you're at ground level, but you're going up another 30 feet, and that's the radar hill that they built up on top of the regular ground level. They buried, and there was already a hill there. They did terraform it. I have proof of that too. I have topographical charts from different years. You can see the hill clearly changed before World War II. Anyway, that tunnel's there, so we know that's like 30 feet deep. Then when they built utilidor tunnels for the Air Force took over that part, right? Then they built their own powerhouse for the radar and all those massive amounts of power that they needed. So there was a huge 4 locomotive engine generators, diesel generator turbines in a huge powerhouse. It definitely went underground because a friend of mine worked there, filled in the giant hatch that was the big, huge water main hatch. And it was flooded for many years. That was also in the documentary, in the bonus footage of a certain documentary. So long story short, that tunnel runs it runs down the whole road that they'd paved to it, underneath the road, and they found it on Sci-Fi Channel, Lester Holt, with GPR. The ceiling was 10 feet below the surface there.
This area, deep within the heart of Camp Hero, is known as the Planetary Grid Crosspoint, a name coined by Preston Nichols. In the Montauk Enigma, my first documentary on the Montauk Project, I relayed a remote viewing experience involving this particular location.
What you're seeing now is what's referred to as the Planetary Grid Crosspoint. And this particular place is very charged with some type of energy. Whether a portal or a vortex or something artificial may have been installed on this area, the remnants of whatever it was are certainly detectable today. The Algonquin Indians, the indigenous tribe predominantly living in Montauk, also knew this area to be very magical and spiritual. Is this particular spot something that they were aware of as well? I wanted my entry into this particular area to be very natural, and as the cameras rolled, my microphone stopped working the second I entered the circle. And the camera itself is acting odd. This is not HD that you're looking at, although it's being recorded in HD, and the focus continues to move in and out, which it did for the rest of the night.
Immediately it feels like I'm being pulled down. Not physically, I feel like my energy, my core essence is being pulled straight down. Now, one of the things that I have said on my show and other shows, I shared an experience wherein I decided to try to remote view this spot. And when I did, I was able to get myself under the ground and I kept going deeper and deeper. And at one point I looked down and in my focus came this laboratory type setting. There were 3 or 4 different people there. There was at least one woman and I think 2 men in lab coats. As odd as it sounds and as cliche as it sounds. Now, it wasn't enough that in this spot, wow, I'm starting to feel really weird right now. It wasn't enough that I saw them. They happened to look up all in tandem at me. And when I saw their eyes looking back at mine, or from where I was, in this particular vision, I panicked because I felt like I connected. They saw me and I went right back up into this spot, right back into, my normal consciousness. So, this was definitely used many times. And if it wasn't used directly by somebody being here, they were tapping the energy of this particular location, right where I'm sitting right now.
I followed up with a second remote viewing session 1 year later, only to find the exact same room, this time without anyone present. All the lights had been extinguished as I attempted to feel within the area for any sign of life, but could detect nothing but an eerie stillness. I asked Jessica Jones, who remote views criminal cases for the FBI, to consider this target, which she gave a full analysis of.
I was tasked with a remote viewing target of the land, I guess it's the land, whatever's going on underground, where that circle was. So some of my data, my sensory data, I was picking up on something hard, metallic, long, very deep, tubular, cylindrical, red, brown, energetic, and melodic. So I was hearing frequencies, sound frequencies, a lot of sound. Matter of fact, for my analytic overlay, which in remote viewing, that's my rational brain, it's like my brain trying to rationalize exactly what my sensory data is, like what I'm sensing. And so this is me trying to make sense. So I picked up on lead, minerals, metals, a cavern, a tunnel, lead pipes. iodine, copper, copper wire, crystals, quartz. So I was picking up on like crystals and quartz, like big crystals. I'm not talking about like small crystals, like some kind of big crystal, potentially like wrapped in wire. Okay. I got that, whatever this is a power station with an engine, tubes, motors, generators, modulator. I also picked up on ley lines and a power source of some sort and a power grid with a lot of sound frequencies. And I wrote down cymatics, okay? And I believe that's, it's sound frequency. And it can be used for healing and things like that. But I picked up on cymatics, okay? I was, something was super noisy, and I was picking up on a lot of tones, like I said, and I was picking up on waves. But, okay, so this is some of the analytic overlay that I wrote down. Sound bath, sound frequency, music, tone, sound hub, ancient ways, microwave scalar energy, something that was going up and down and all around. And then I picked up on time riff. Through time and space is what I heard. Like I clairaudiently heard that. Through time and space like continuum. Okay, so this was some sort of there's some sort of generator down there, and I mean there could be anything down there. I do believe that there's a lot of activity to this day going on underground right there, and it's probably super active. They're potentially doing time traveling things there, and if it's not today, it was in the past. And knowing what I know of what went on at Camp Hero, that's exactly what they were doing back in the day, according to the people who were in those projects.
You know, when we think about the Montauk Project and we understand that there's a non-linear aspect about it, it sort of puts a certain perspective on the people that are coming out now. You know, a young man like yourself saying, you know, I was involved in this one way or another. When I've talked to people about this in the past, and my own research brought me to the idea that there are sister projects that occurred after Montauk, the way that we know it. Maybe it never actually, you know, shut down, but, you know, these sisters projects went into the 90s and so forth. How was it in your experience that you are the age you are, and were you being sent back to Montauk to work within that realm, or how did that unfold?
Okay, so how it worked at Montauk was they would take you between the ages of 6 and 8, and they would mind fracture you. You know, the dunking you in the water, raping you, torturing you, making you kill animals. They mind fractured you. And after they did that, and they had you programmed, and they had your altars set up, then they would send you back home, and then they'd pick you up when you're around 15 or 16, and they'd do that because it's like, okay, a child is useless as a soldier, but they had to program them. So they programmed the child, and then when they're old enough to like actually start training for combat, like 15, 16, that's when they take them. And so for them, at Montauk, you know, you get this kid and they're 6 years old, you send them through the portal, and 5 minutes later you got them at 15, 16 years old. So this is like, literally, because you have to think about that at Montauk, there's no such thing as time. Like people like say to me, like people have been like, you weren't born until 1991 and Montauk happened before then. It's like, dude, time travel.
You said that you spent maybe, what, 33 years or something like that in Montauk? Did I hear that correctly, or was that something?
Yeah, I don't know if it was all in Brookhaven. I couldn't tell you that, sorry. So, but I do remember being in a cage, and we were naked, and they would, it was cold, and they would spray us down with water, and as if we were not cold enough. That would have been the early part, but eventually they allowed us to be in the barracks.
Do you remember that holding cell sort of, I mean, you know, when they went into, you know, Al, Duncan, and Cameron, when they went into Camp Hero for that now legendary video of the walk around, you know, they identify, you know, chicken coop areas. It kind of looks like they, you know, maybe the kids were held there. Do you remember anything like that, where, you know, they stacked slats of beds and so forth, or do you have a different memory of that space?
Well, I have a memory of another facility on another location where I was at, but yeah, all the kids in there were psychically linked to each other, so if one of them got tortured, the rest of them felt it. But yeah, that was another facility. I think that's connected with Umbrella, but yeah, that's all I can tell you about that. Yeah.
Is there anything else that...
Well, they put a dog bowl in there and gave us some food sometimes. And then later on, we would have this paper bag with a sandwich in there and a little pill, red pill we were supposed to take. And that would help wipe our memories. I think Tony Rodriguez was talking about the pill that they gave him, but he was allergic to it. So I think that's why he partly got his memories back, because he wasn't able to take the drugs that they want him, they put us on. And I don't know what it was. It's red, but tastes like cinnamon.
Were your folks or your family part of any sort of military factions, and wherein this became an easier pursuit in one way or shape or form?
Yes, Air Force intelligence, satanic cults, Freemasons, are all intertwined and all very present on both sides of my family. The Air Force was more on my biological father's side, and the satanic and Luciferian cult content was more on the side of my mother. But these groups work together very closely, especially recently, and especially on projects such as Montauk. Historically, there's been a little bit more separation between the sort of more clinical or science-based approach to mind control and the more religious or kind of, faith-based approach to mind control. But following the split in our larger society between science-led beliefs and spirituality-led beliefs. But recently, and this is part of why the dark forces have become so powerful, is because they, in advance of the rest of us, have embraced this union of science and spirit, and they're really working both sides. And organizationally, that's mostly the Satanists and Luciferians and Air Force intelligence and the CIA working together very closely. Yeah.
Can you tell me why ritual and satanic worship and whatever Luciferian concept was so important to people who were running Montauk?
Well, people are not naturally inclined to cause harm, so you have to give them some limiting belief system so that they cause harm. Maybe that's a little boring, but that's the basic kind of reason. Yeah.
I like that. It's succinct.
Yeah.
That we have to go around in different factions to come back to a certain point, because maybe it is that simple. And I think a lot of people feel that there's more of a complex nature to the human nature that we're familiar with, but at the same time, we're very simple creatures.
Yeah.
And you can see this in certain actions observed, in many ways.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you'll always be working with these experiences that you had within the Montauk Project for your entire life? Do you think that there will come a point possibly where you can say, you know what, I'm done, I've let this go, I don't need to revisit this unless I'm, attempting to work with somebody else who's going through the trauma, and, as a reflection, you can be there. Do you think there will be an end point for you where it doesn't matter any longer?
Definitely by 38, 33. Definitely. But that's obviously beyond this lifetime, most likely. Within this lifetime, I think so, yes. It gets lighter every year. And with every person that I help to heal, it gets lighter for me too. So I'm also helping myself with this process. Every time it just gets a little more transparent, a little more clear, and it just moves easier. So I feel that happening within myself. I expect it to continue.
What you have with the Montauk Project, you have an effort by the secret government or whoever to act as an interlocutor between heaven and earth. Although it's much more of an interlocutor of earth and hell. So, and Duncan and Preston went deeply into the domains of heaven and hell. Not so much in a religious sense, but it wasn't irreligious either. It was in a esoteric sense that they would contact different domains that would come through in the experience. So the souls of Montauk are, and of course, all the devastation that was done out there is sort of on top of those souls. It's like comparing the saints of Christianity to all the people that died in the Crusades.
On the first trip taken to Camp Hero, Mike Colantonio happened to spot an old audio reel emerging from under the brush, partially buried and weathered. This was certainly not an object that should be exposed to the elements, and an absolute anomaly why it was there at all. The reel was kept and preserved, and 1 year later, Brian Minnick would bring the reel to a recording studio some distance from his town. What was discovered upon playback was curious in and of itself. Keep in mind, magnetic audio tape quickly degrades when exposed, but somehow the reel found exhibited very little sign of deterioration.
No, if anybody can bring it back,
That's a reel to reel. Holy shit,
Holy
dude.
shit, Brian.
This is like something you find on Reddit or something.
Yeah, you're right.
Holy
I say we take
shit.
it.
Why not?
Oh,
Definitely, man. I'll send it to them.
if anybody is
Like the old home movies.
Yep.
Fuck yeah.
If anybody can.
Let's take a look at that thing there.
That's bizarre, right? Yeah, that goes right up to the wall.
It's a reel to reel.
That is amazing.
You never know, maybe something can be salvaged off of that, and that's just odd to find lying around on the topsoil.
Amazing.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Good
Oh my god.
eye, Mike. Good eye.
Wow.
It's a weird kind of music to it doesn't sound like even it sounds decades before these reels.
It is widely believed that music was utilized within the programming process and as a propellant into time travel endeavors. Where did this reel come from to be so well preserved? Was it accidentally dropped by some passing audiophile? Or had this object slipped through from another timeline? Both propositions may seem absurd, but it is obvious the reel must have an origin, even if we never know where that might be.
A lot of our duties at Montauk were not necessarily military. Some of what we were used for was more cultural and spiritual and musical and artistic. So we were used for our creative capabilities. And specifically, we were used for writing a lot of the popular music that's come out over the last few generations in our culture. So that's a whole angle of Montauk that's barely been explored. You know, there's a lot of, obviously when you're talking about reptilians eating children and all this dramatic stuff, it tends to overshadow the more subtle things. But equally important for the project and for the planet is to go into that cultural production aspect of things.
You'll see if you watch the peak number, it just shoots to like 7 or 8, like almost instantly. I can't even catch it.
Huh. That's just jumping everywhere, dude.
This camera just got drained. That's its standard magnetic. Oh. Yeah, I wonder. Holy shit. You can hear something in there, man. Listen to this. You gotta hold it down a little bit. Oh, that's cool.
And if it matches this vibration, that'd be cool.
That's an intriguing. Okay. We really need tools to tell us what we know, though. But it helps the viewer.
It certainly does.
That's pretty interesting. I do hear some kind of thumping and bumping. It's not in a pattern.
You know, I learned a long time ago, the viewer can't feel what I feel. Not all.
Interesting. We just did a lot of tests in one spot.
Yeah, why would they hide basic structures that most buildings have on the blueprints and not tell us, act like there aren't any normal structures like basements or anything underground? Because actually, if you look at those, unredacted secret blueprints that we have, it's basically because that's the infrastructure of the system that they have. It's not really a house, it's a bunker. So it's disguised to look like a house. Like the ones we went in yesterday, the ones we just went in on this video. They're actually cement inside. It may look like a house on the outside, but they have tunnels underneath, and they have generators in the basement, and they have, a tunnel that you can leave, and also that breathes the generators. They have to ventilate. And they have rung ladders in the house up to the roof. So the point is that they all need a basement for many things, just like heating, normal house. Actually, this is like an extra powered house. It has many things. It's actually a bunker, so it needs more than the average house. You have to have things in your basement. Even if you have a crawl space or something, you have heating things, elements under your house, breathing things. So it's just common sense. There's a basement, and you can see manholes all across the site. We have blueprints to show the water tunnels, which is where just the water reservoir takes the water and they flow through the tunnels. They also have storm sewers on the surface that many people have seen in the woods that are like channels and streams that have wood across them. That was the natural storm sewers, so they don't have those tunnels. But there's so many things underground, and we just found basements to buildings I've been in that I didn't know there were underground. So we went into an Air Force barracks that I have been in many times. I did not know there was a basement, but we just looked in the window, and it's a drop about 20 feet down. And you're looking in there, it's like a cavernous basement, and the whole floor was just gone. And there you go, there's another basement. We looked in multiple holes and found underground rooms. Now, there's rooms everywhere that I know about. There's underground MK2 naval computer rooms. So each battery had one of those in front of it. In a hatch, you go down, it's like an old-fashioned computer on the wall, a bunch of cable holes on the wall. It's nothing big. There's electrical substations. We went in one that's in the bottom of a bunker. That's the one we went down into the basement. But there's also other ones that are just a manhole that you go down. There's also water main hatches. There's utilidor hatches everywhere. There's sewer tunnel hatches everywhere. And so basically they have electrical systems, water systems. The old World War II stuff was mostly phone wire. So that was all about phones. Everything they'd have to pick up and talk to people, like in Shadmore where we went. You can see how far it is from the radar. You can see the radar from the roof of the
Shadmore State Park, situated a few miles west of Camp Hero in the Shadmore Plains, was a satellite site of Camp Hero in World War II and was the location of 2 auxiliary bunkers and an anti-aircraft gun nest. There were also subsurface communication tunnels that housed the landline phone cables and ran all the way to Montauk Point. This was the main means of communication for targeting the shots, placing the shots, giving the orders to fire the shots, so these tunnels were very important and nothing would work without them. However, this site has a darker history. In 1898, this was one of the many locations of Camp Wyckoff, a quarantine camp for the very first soldiers coming home from a foreign war, the Spanish-American War. And they were sick and dying, many with malaria, yellow fever, but most were dying from starvation due to poor supply lines and poor planning. There was a lot of death and sadness on this property long ago. So on my very first visit to this site, I was not able to get into the first bunker, but the easternmost bunker was open, but there happened to be people inside. I came all that way, and I figured I would just let them know I was entering and check it out and then be on my way. When I started to climb in, I heard them singing. I could make out 2 males and 2 females, so I yelled out to them, but they did not hear me. Before I could climb in any further, I noticed the nature of their song. It had a dark undertone. It sounded either religious or ritualistic. Maybe it was the octaves they were hitting in their harmonies. It was musically well done, but you could tell they were practicing, and I heard some of the lyrics. Lo, it's just the eye of darkness evil.
They didn't hear me, so I decided to nope out of there as I wasn't interested in anything they were getting into. The date was December 18th as well, which happens to be the pagan holiday Saturnalia. So that may be the case. Montauk is known to be a high-energy location, full of high strangeness. Not just Montauk Point, but the entire area. It turns out some of the Camp Hero maintenance workers were watching my channel and saw the video. They were so concerned about it that they went there the very next day to check for signs of animal remains, blood, or any signs of sacrifice. I watched them climb into the bunker on Facebook Live, where I had just been the day before. When I asked one of them later if they had found anything, they told me they didn't find anything at all. It was very clean. In fact, it was too clean. It even smelled of bleach. I think they said it reeked of bleach, which can't be a good sign in this kind of location. One of my subscribers had watched, a subscriber and friend had watched the entire video in 25% speed, and then sent me like 24 screenshots of a very white, very round head with large black eyes that seemed to be peering out of the windows of the first bunker as I went by, and even ducking down when I turned the camera towards it. And then it showed up in other locations as I walked towards the eastern bunker. I was very happy not to have actually seen that when I was there. And I remained curious about this place until Dark Hour Paranormal, Michael, and myself were able to enter the building the following summer. Luckily, we were alone that day, and we were not able to climb in and check out the upper floors. And we did not see any signs of any previous activities. It just goes to show you, you never know what you might encounter when at Montauk.
We're all here because we're tied to Montauk in one way, shape, or form, namely the Montauk Project. Out of many people that I've met, you seem to be very deeply ingrained and affected by this particular project. Can you start me where things kind of went for you from the beginning of your recollection of being a part of this? Moving into that as an initiate, what was your experience like?
So it started with I had an altar that kept on coming out. It would take over, and I guess it was just bizarre and really unsettling. I would say to myself, you need to remember who you are. You need to remember what happened to you. And that went on for quite a long time, and I was really freaked out by it. And then I had this dream that I was in this like a lecture hall, and it's like at the podium where the teacher would be. There was a military guy, and he was telling me about how I've learned how to use my abilities, and now I'm going to be transferred to learn how to use them in combat. And I'm looking at his face in this dream, and his face is blurred. You can't see his face. It's like the Matrix or something. Like it's just like a peach blur. Like they blurred out his face. And in the dream, it was obviously disconcerting. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And then I looked to my right, and there's this little girl. So I was like, this whole lecture room, but I was still left over here, and there's this little girl to the right. And that same thing, I couldn't see her face. I believe it was my trauma twin because she had black hair, and I think it was her, but yeah, I couldn't see her face and it was blurred. And then I remember thinking, looking back at the military guy, and like in the dream, I was like my child self in the dream, and I could feel that too. Then I was like, fuck you for taking me from my home, you fucking piece of shit. I wish I could use my powers to make your head explode. And then I woke up. And I was just like, what the fuck was that, for lack of better? I mean, it was just like, that wasn't just a dream. Like I could tell it was like a recollection of some kind. So then I started doing a little bit of research. I've always been into like the alien abduction stuff, but it was like I got this brick wall put up. I guess it was probably mind control programming where I wouldn't go past like the hybrid program. Like I knew a lot about that, but I wouldn't go past that. I was into Dr. David Jacobs, who's pretty good at researching and did a lot of work there. But I didn't understand like, okay, this is connected to the military until I had that dream. And then once I had that dream, it just like it opened that up for me. So I decided to look into it a little bit more, and I found Tony Rodriguez, and I'm pretty sure in his interview he talked about the blurred faces, and that just freaked me out. And that's when I connected the secret space programs to reality for me, because for me it was something that I was unwilling to accept it because of the can of worms that would open up for me, I think is what it was. And so then I realized I kind of had to accept it. So then I did a meditation, and I was trying to figure out, like, okay, well, I kind of get the gist of what they do. They kidnap people, turn them into sex slaves, send them off into space, yada, yada, yada. But, like, what happened to me, right? So I started looking into it and trying to dig through my memories and figure out, like, where did it start for me? Like, how, like, you know, and, like, what happened to me? And so I did a meditation. I lied down and I meditated really deeply on basically, like, okay, what is this? Where does it all come from? Where did it all start? And I remembered the fact that when I was in elementary school in 2nd grade, I was in the talented and gifted program. And then when I went to 3rd grade, I wasn't in it anymore. And I remember asking the teacher, why am I not in the TAG program anymore? And she's like, I don't know. And there were these other kids that were in the TAG program, and I remembered being in it with them. And they were making fun of me because they're like, dude, you were never in the talented and gifted program. You weren't in the TAG program. Like, we were in it and you weren't. And that was really confusing to me. I remember even going to home to my mom and asking her why, like, telling her how confused I was, and like, why would they, like, lie to me and say, like, they don't remember me? And of course I realized, no, yeah, I never was in talented and gifted program. They were taking me out of school to some sort of facility somewhere and doing experiments on me and torturing me and stuff. And once they activated my psychic abilities, it was go time. And my memories aren't like 100% clear on how I got brought to Montauk, but I do believe it was through the public school system. And another thing, yeah, that's basically how I started finding out about Montauk, was just finding out about the secret space programs in general, and the fact that I was taken out of school through the talented and gifted program. I didn't necessarily remember Montauk right away, but then I started researching. I found Joseph Powell, and Joseph Powell did some energy work on me. Well, he doesn't like it when you call it energy work. I don't know what I'm supposed to call it, but he did something to me where he opened up some chakras in me or something like that, and I started getting memories back. Like, there are etheric blocks in me, I guess, where I couldn't remember what happened to me. Like, they're blocking my memories, and he helped me with getting memories back. And so, yeah, one of the memories that I first got back after he unblocked was the fact that when they did pull me out of school, I remember where they brought me, sort of, like, a lot of it's blurry, but I remember that I was brought to some sort of underground facility. I was strapped to a table, the classic electrodes under your nails and strapped to your genitals, all that stuff, and you're naked. And there was a TV in the next room. It might have even been in the same room, regardless, I couldn't see it. That's basically the point. I just couldn't see the TV. And they told me that every time that I hear the beep, I gotta tell them what color it is, because the TV it would go beep blue, beep orange, beep purple, beep yellow, you know. And basically, they what they did was, they're like, you're gonna tell us what colors are on the TV. I'm like, I can't do it. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to do that? I can't see it. And they said, we know. The guy in the brown suit, I call him the man in the brown suit, I don't know who he was, but he said, we know what you are, you fucking monster. Like, you can do this. Like, you're gonna do it. And I remember this guy would, like, put out cigarettes and stuff on me, and he was really mean to me. He seemed to have a genuine hatred for me. Yeah, eventually got to the point where, like, they'd shock me. So, like, if I guessed wrong the color, they would shock me. And it got to the point where I would guess right. Like, it'd go beep, and I'd say yellow, and I'd be right. Beep, orange, beep. And I was like, I could see it without having to see it. I could remote view it.
To your understanding or recollection, do you remember anything outside of the Montauk Project creating super soldier type events or people, or did it originate in Montauk?
Well, there was a mission I did for Kruger. I was sent back in time to take out Heather Shaw. So Heather Shaw is the head of Shaw House, and Shaw House is an underground facility underneath the city of London. They're pretty much responsible for human trafficking and pretty much everything wrong with this planet. And she also goes by the name of the Sumerian goddess of the underworld, Orishagal. So I did take her out, meaning I killed her, but she didn't stay dead. And she had her sister, Janet Shaw, recruit me into Montauk. Janet Shaw, her clone in this reality is the pop star Taylor Swift. And Heather Shaw in this reality is the actress Vanessa Kirby. So so I think I might have actually been the super soldier first before I got recruited into it. Time travel was making all this thing a little blurry. According to Peter the Insider, I spent about 33 years at Montauk in that particular project. But I don't know if it was all exactly in the Camp Hero area in a pocket reality or Brookhaven. But we have Chassie over here next to me, and we were actually doing some research on the Montauk 2.0 project. Now we'll go on to that if you want. I can go into history of that, but Chassie will help explain a little bit more about that in a bit. But so where would you like me to take this conversation? Do you want me to explain a little bit more about how my understanding how the projects are divided up?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, sure. So we have the umbrella program of Project Phoenix. Now some of this information you can go back and listen to the original Al Balick material, but there were some group of paperclip scientists, Nazi scientists, that were conducting mind control experiments in Brookhaven labs. This will be right after World War II. So some of these experiments got into the hands of certain senators, and they became very nervous and scared of what their research was uncovering on mind control. So they decided the project was shut down, and these paperclip scientists were scouting for a new location, and they just found the Army base in Camp Hero was about to be decommissioned. And so that was decommissioned in 68, so 69 it was started to be separated. So really about 71 or so the so-called Montauk Project program began. But it is my belief it was in a pocket reality where they stopped time. Yeah. So on all the umbrellas under Project Phoenix is, we got Project Pegasus, which was that was with the chronovisor technology, where they're eventually they figured out how to use it to go back in time. In 1979, there was a group of let's say private corporations that were interested in getting away from the military oversight because a Camp Hero, because that was a military program. And also there's more freedom to share information between other scientists in a more corporate setting. So a Stargate, or basically a sun disk was located somewhere in the Amazon that was brought over to Brookhaven, and the scientists were trying to get it to turn on, and ultimately they found that it required a blood sacrifice. So thousands of children were being kidnapped and brought over to Brookhaven and murdered to activate the sun disk. And a acorn-like device would pop through a portal and go wherever in time they wanted to bring the sun disk to. So one of the things they did is they went back in time to the 1860s when it was when it was still active, to get more intel on other technologies. And also they found out that it was designed by certain reptilians like Quetzalcoatl. That might explain what some of the Mayans why they were committing so many blood sacrifices, was to activate this technology given to them by some of these, in my opinion, really negative reptilians. So some of the children from Montauk 1.0 over Camp Hero they wanted to bring them over to try to activate the sun disk without a blood sacrifice. And so that's where it is my belief that I'm over there right now, a different clone body. And also Chassie remembers being over there as well.
How can you tell the difference when it comes to Montauk and the experiences of the Secret Space Program? How can you tell the difference between a past life that you're living, and again, I understand that time's not linear, so just for the sake of conversation, how would you differentiate an experience that you had in another body, in another time, in another experience altogether, versus something that happened to you in this time period within this body, and so forth, again, in way of memory?
Yeah, that's a delicate one. Generally, the experiences that are of this body, like on whatever timeline, in whatever form, like if it's the same physical body, which for most of us it is, the memories are going to be much more palpable, much more in the body, in the present body. For those of us who do past life work, there's usually a sense of separation. That was that body, this is this body. And so, there may be things that cross over from life to life. The most common one I usually hear is like, oh, I was killed in such and such a way, and my death wound has carried over to my new body, and now I'm working with it here, right? So that's a very common one. Like, and I'm gesturing because, you know, I've gone through that. I've been killed in various wars in the past. Most of us have. When it's in the present body, it's much more immediate, and it's more like working with childhood trauma. I mean, it is childhood trauma most of the time. But you're not always in a child body, but generally your state of mind is going to be of a young child. Like, even if you're, you know, appearing adult to the outside world and you're functioning as a super soldier, like internally on a very deep level, you're probably going to be a small child. And so those memories tend to come back from a child's perspective with a child's emotions, you know, very wild. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You know, considering the developmental arena of, you know, a child's mind at that time.
Yeah.
And what was done, obviously, or purportedly, you know, as we find. And of course, the memories, they flood back. And those are all corroboration against each other, which, you know, in many cases, these people don't, you know, we don't know each other from a hole in the wall, and then we meet each other over this experience, and we realize that there are consistencies. And that's, you know, the scary thing, because now you know there's something grounded in reality, and it's becoming real for you in this time.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like when we survivors meet each other, it's constantly like, oh, I remember you from this, I remember you from that. And like, I don't remember myself there, but okay. You know, that's usually the first phase. And then gradually acceptance comes, and then gradually it's like, oh, right, I remember you too. Oh, and it's usually, you know, it's underneath all this pain. So it takes a while to open that up and get there.
I didn't really know anything about any of this until May, when I met him at a conference. When I met James at the conference. And I was just like, wow, okay. I had been avoiding it. I had like perpetually been avoiding it, running as far away as I could. I just wanted to do the spiritual work and be a good person. And I had already been through enough in this life. I didn't want to go and make any more waves. I just wanted some peace. And when I met him at the conference, and he was telling me his story, I started having pieces come back to me. Memories that I remember in this life that triggered me, and I didn't know why, because I didn't want to see. And then I just couldn't ignore it anymore. He was like, James said, you got to tell your story. It'll help.
In regards to the Montauk Project, through all the evidence that you gathered, through all the research that you've done for the years that you've been doing this, what is your official thought on the existence of that project, the way that it's been described by Preston Nichols as, you know, the first whistleblower, and of course many others who claim to be part of that project that have come out of the woodwork? What is your overall thought about the happenings that might have been at Montauk?
Oh, well, I've gone like this. I've gone back and forth so many times since the very beginning. You know, I started off suspect, and then when we got those tickets to see like a public speaking event, and got to meet, you know, sit right there in front of them and listen to them, and then talk to them at the end of those, and introduce ourselves. We began to really see some of the things that they were coming up with were very real, things that were dug into, like just little facts and things that I was able to verify, basically. Some of the things were local knowledge, and I checked around with people, and some of the things checked out. Like, it sounds very vague, but here's an example. Somebody I know very well who worked at a missile base, not a radar base, but he was in the Army. He went for R&R in the 70s, like 73, 74 at Camp Hero. And he was in the Army, but is an Air Force base. But they would have other groups and brigades and different service people. I don't know who they had or what, but they had different people in rotation to have R&R, they called it, relaxation and rest, or rest and relaxation. Anyway, he told me, he's like, yeah, I went there twice for it. And I'm like, oh, well, what did you do? He's like, nothing, we just sat around and ate, like picnicking. And I said, was the radar turning? And he's like, yeah, the radar was turning, we were just hanging out. And that was it. And then he said I went there twice actually. So there you go. That's something Preston and Peter Moon wrote about in the book. And when he told me, he doesn't mess around. He doesn't believe in, he won't say any of this stuff is real. So this is a guy who absolutely would not be agreeing with any of this. And here he is telling me he went to the R&R. That's just one small sample of like, so I went back and forth with the trust with them. And there's times when I trusted what they said, but then when I saw some things, I started questioning, of course, with the kids, you know, the stories with what they did. I mean, almost admitting some stuff, and like, I already didn't get a good vibe off one person there. Yeah, because what I wanted to say is I've gone back and forth with trusting them. And I do think there's a grain of truth in all legends, and I do think also that some things may have been embellished. It has crossed my mind before, is this like something they wrote to make somebody look the other way, or to make the story seem so unbelievable that it can't be true? But I really, in the end, I think Peter Moon found them and was trying to get to the bottom of it and help them get it out there in books. I think Preston is a man who definitely believes it. I know a family member of his who's a friend of my wife's friend, basically, and she is a family member and known Preston his whole life. And we asked her, you know, did he ever work there? And she said, yeah, as far as I know and my family knows, yes, he did, and we were always aware of it. And she actually gave me a book signed by Preston's mother, Jeannie Nichols, I think she just wrote her name in her own book, and it ended up in her hands. And then her husband didn't want it in the house because it had really crazy art. And I said, this is awesome, I'll take it, you know? And then turns out, so I have this book signed by Preston and Peter Moon. They signed it to a judge. That judge's grandson lent me my first copy of the Montauk Project, and he never took it back. I never gave it back. But long story short, I have the book. Then they wrote about that book in the second book, saying that they signed a book for the judge who presided over the court trial where they were arrested at the base. And I'm like, I'm reading this book and I have the book they're talking about right here, you know? So I had a long like back and forth with thinking about them and what they've said, and I really appreciate the books and what they did, because it kind of gave me my style of, Peter Moon in a sense of connecting far across points and try to find similarities and things. At least like that, and some of it's from like just things like whatever, logic or detective shows or something I picked up. But the point of trying to map all these things that are not interesting, like sewer tunnels, it's just to find out where the interesting stuff is. That's what I really want to do. And to do that, you have to be thorough, you have to rule out, and if you believe something's there and you find evidence there's otherwise, you have to let it go and say you were wrong and move on to something that's what I'm doing. I'm constantly changing it, but there's things that aren't changing, that are like solid now. I found like facts that are like rock solid. So I'm gonna plot those things in as definites, and I'm gonna have things that are maybes and probablys, and then I'll have things that I don't freaking know, so this is just my guess. And that's how I'm gonna try to do my mapping of the entire tunnel system.
A cross, like a memorandum cross here. Right over here, brother.
Is this private thing or need to be on document? It doesn't, it's up to you.
I'm giving you the option. I'm gonna go get my tower. I want to gift. I want to gift it. You got your smudge?
I was about to say we should almost have our bare feet on the grass.
Really? Oh yeah. Did you say? What's it feeling?
Yeah.
Alandra, did you feel any?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
Take your shoes off.
You know my brother? Rick? How do you know him?
join us as we release the captives. Rejoice! Freedom! Victory! Victoria flag in the star of dawn! We return organic time.
So overall, what were we witnessing while you were all in the circle? I mean, we saw a lot of emotion. It began with you guys huddled together standing, and there were utterances that sounded similar to some sort of Native American language. It might have been speaking in tongues, which is okay because within the ritual it's about the intention, right? And yet there, I don't know, maybe there was some light language kind of mixed in there. What can you make of what was being expressed while you were in the circle yesterday with everyone?
Yeah, it's a mixture of things. Sometimes it's pure sound just to get past the mind and to get into the emotional body. Sometimes it's that, speaking in tongues is one name for that. Other times it's languages that are used by the Galactic Federation, like Syrian especially, light language. In my case, there's a lot of Lemurian mixed in there. So, Lemurian has language relationships to several different Earth languages. Especially places of the Lemurian diaspora like South America. So some of the sounds are going to be broadly similar to some Native American languages and some South American languages.
How do you feel the ritual overall went yesterday? Do you feel that you cleared something? Do you think that things have been lifted? The way that I described it, just for example, when somebody asked me, did they do it? Did they clear everything? I said, well, it was kind of like pulling the worm's head out of the ground. The rest of it's still kind of snaking through.
Yeah.
We got an initial route out. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I resonate with that metaphor. I think it's a good one. Yeah, we blew the lid off of things. And now it's much more open for a lot of people to work with who are called to work with it. I think we accomplished what we set out to do. I mean, that was basically the mission, right? We wanted to use, and I haven't even gone into that, but there's this big time wave that we're a part of. And especially every 20 years, like 2023, this year, 2003, 1983, 1963, these are all, and 83, these are all very pivotal years in the whole cycle of these energies. And there are interlocking reasons for that, having to do with just how the Earth is moving and evolving. But yeah, we wanted to use this portal to really bring this to light around the world and beyond, to bring healing into our personal lives and into the lives of all people affected by these projects. So I think in that goal we were fabulously successful.
I mean, getting to see the Sage radar and all that, I mean, it's interesting to be here, but I don't want it to be about being a tourist or a fanboy. Really, it's about being with the survivors and seeing their healing and watching them say, wait a second, I remember you. You were there. You were that person who did X, Y, and then they're fill in the details. And I'm watching this in front of me, okay? So as someone who's done a lot of advocacy and organizing and you know, my own armchair researching and organizing, and yeah, and this is happening in front of me. I know this, people aren't making this up on the fly, very detailed levels that corroborate with other survivors I've spoken with across the country and the world.
So, if I could, Angel, I'd like to hear your take on what yesterday was like for you.
What yesterday was like?
Yes. What was?
Well,
it
started 2.5 years ago when I learned about the portal and started doing really serious research about it, and the anniversary of the Philadelphia experiment. And I had visions of all this. I knew we'd all get together and do all this stuff. And my dream is to have us ascend, to shut down the projects and to save the children, because we've all been through hell, and I would not wish this on any child. And there was no way I could sit back and wait for somebody else to do it, knowing that we're the ones who are meant to do that, and we're powerful enough to do it, and doing it together was essential. Because the more of us we get together in one place, the more powerful we are. And I don't see the point in wasting billions of dollars of government money or whoever it was to train us to do all these magical things and just use it for them. Why not use it for good for a change? So that was my goal.
I felt some grief from those who were lingering and watching. They've been waiting for us to come in and do this so that they could be freed. And I felt the mixture of their emotions as they released so that they could let go. And I felt their transference of their energy to us in their letting go. And then I felt like I was home. And I was excited to see everybody, my family, my brothers and my sisters, and all the elementals and the Sasquatch. And I could feel them around us, supporting us. And so that made me really happy. And I felt childlike again, free to be me finally. And I felt that our joining together and allowing our ability to allow ourselves to be who we are, who we've become, it gave us this unity that can't be broken. And we just started shifting all of the things that were done to us that weren't right. They were just horrible. We were able to release the emotions that they caused us to feel, and we released those. And in doing that, we blew a hole that swirled into a vortex that cleared the atmosphere around there. And it like rippled out in power and waves of energy from there and reset everything. And when we opened our eyes, I could see the matrix, the grid, the honeycomb. And I just felt lighter, freer, and at peace, finally.
I think yesterday also went well. I didn't really know what to expect coming into this. I was fairly uninformed myself about what to do. I'm just following the the voices in my head, essentially, just going with what I think is right, and it brought me here to New York, and I met my friends, my team, my family here, and we did what Chastity said. We did a lot of work, and we accomplished an impossible feat. But we did it together, and it took all of us, and we were just doing what we thought was the right thing to do, and it turned out we know what we're doing, apparently, so we're not crazy after all. But no, it went really well. It was a hard job, but everybody here was more than willing to risk everything they had to do it, and we succeeded, and I hope we will see the results of that work soon. However, I think this is one very big step in a series of many steps that need to be taken to stop what's going on and then to start rectifying what has been done in the past. But that is a very long process that will need much care and attention. But yesterday was a very good day, a great day for humanity, a great day for this galaxy, and a great day for the universe. So thank you. I'm so glad we're all here, and I'm glad that this team was formed and that we all made it to do this impossible task that is now done.
So I am a Montauk experiencer. Most of my memories are buried in a little pocket in my mind where I don't have to deal with them. I do have a few memories though, and I wanted to organize this trip so that people that were also experiencers could come along, and we could use this as an opportunity to transmute the trauma that we were put through. So over the past few days, we've been visiting Camp Hero, where we've been putting our hands on the walls and tuning in to the past, like an echo, a quantum echo that still resonates in the area. That, for me anyway, unfortunately, I'm also tuning into another aspect of myself there, which is screaming to get out. But yeah, so we did a ceremony or right on the ley line in the barracks area in Camp Hero, where we were tuning in to some of our aspects. And my particular experience is I saw myself in the future, and I'm questioning why the heck am I here? Why the hell am I here? Because I didn't want to be here. I signed up for it in a way. I was kind of forced into it, but I think being sent back through time and being a participant of these programs, I was, at least in my opinion, I helped transmute it. At least I am now. But yeah, so that's my experience.
Yeah, for me, what I've been experiencing, what I experienced yesterday, is just like reconnection to the truth. Being here and seeing Camp Hero, seeing where I know flying saucers used to land. The landing pads are still right there, right out in the open. It's been people walk past them every day and have no clue what they are. Like, it's just really mind-blowing, and to see all the entrances, blocked off with cement and everything else. And it's my first time being here as a free person, so it's all about, for me, it's been about grounding myself and reminding myself that this is, all real, and that I need to take it seriously. And then the healing. I liked what Colin said before about just the fact that, like, we apparently know what we're doing, because they were talking in this, not dead language, because we were speaking it, so I can't call it dead, but it's this weird language, and I could understand them, and just like, and then like during the ritual, just I pulled some etheric implants out of James, and I had no idea that I knew how to do that. I just knew I had to do it, so I did it. And yeah, for me, it's just been an experience of like grounding myself and me and my what I am, my truth. Because the thing about Montauk is, I think the saddest part about Montauk the Montauk Project, Project Phoenix, whatever you want to call it, is the fact that they took us from ourselves. Like, they robbed us of ourselves. They shattered us into a million pieces and took us away from ourselves. So this is about, like, the very slow and arduous process of reassimilating all those pieces and becoming whole again. And I think one of the most, like, this was hugely important to come here. Like, I didn't even realize how important it was until I was here, because it is transmutation. A lot of people ask me, like, what have you noticed about this trip? Like, and I've just noticed that it's not as dark as I thought it was going to be. And it's because we are all here in a positive manner, and we're all here for love and light and, all the good things. And then you got to keep in mind, like, all these people that come to this town on vacation with their families and stuff like that, like, they have good energy. They're bringing good energy here, and they're just having picnics with their families, enjoying the beach. It's a place where there's a lot of like good energy, actually, despite the fact that all the bad things happened here. And it's not a negative ley line. It's just a ley line, and it can be used for good or evil. And I think we literally healed that ley line yesterday. We literally healed it because it was out of tune and it was messed up. So we just kind of knew what we had to do, and we just went in and did it, and we healed that ley line.
I've been coming out here for a couple of years with Dark Hour Paranormal Michael and Brian Minnick from Montauk Strange, and we've come and been trying to figure things out, I guess, right, and working our way around, documenting things. I guess it was somewhat of a, maybe we didn't realize it was going to come here, but we knew it was going to come here. It was just preparation. It was almost preparation, if you will. And you guys all came out here, and we linked up. And I'm learning a lot about this. I didn't know much about it at all. And the ritual is really beautiful. I'm really happy that that ceremony took place, and the amount of respect that was there. You mentioned the elementals and the Sasquatch. I saw them and felt them as well. They were there with us, and that was what I wanted to try to bring to the table, is to bring that element of their approval and their help and their, them to understand that we were there for good and for healing, and we weren't the bad humans that they may have seen in the past. One thing I'd like to touch on, I guess, is the energy inside the circle where you all were was very strong, and I was very reluctant. I was doing like a little two-step, right, where I was kind of reluctant to go in, and I kept kind of coming back out and going back in, and at some point, I believe Angel cued me, like, in my mind, like, so I looked at her, and then she called me over into the middle where you all were, and something interesting happened. We were all connected through our hands in one way or another, and I had my eyes closed, and at one point, I suppose if I had to label it, maybe there was some sort of transformation going on, but I visually saw it. And I've seen these, all of us, I've seen you guys for a couple days now up to that point, but when I opened my eyes, you were different. You were soldiers, if you will, of like space. You were dressed in, like, you weren't dressed in like the battle rattle that some of them were. You were in like what I would call like a Class A uniform of some sort, like it was a lot to take in, you know what I mean? It was a lot to take in. It was I didn't really know what to expect. It was I didn't really know what to make of it. It just happened. I tried to refocus, gain focus again, and connect, and we continued to heal, and then we did some work on James a little later, and what I was doing was Reiki. I think it was a really healing and beautiful thing, I'm glad you guys let me be a part of it, and I'm proud of you, all of you, very proud of you.
The survivors of traumatic events will always seek to heal themselves through whatever modality or introspection is appropriate. The survivors of the Montauk Project are no different and continue to seek solace and quietude from within. For those who may disagree that a project like the one described at Camp Hero could exist, recall there were hearings held on MKUltra, a black project that explored mind control and manipulation, programming, and psychic activity.
Do you have any follow side effects since the
Yes.
test took place, and what have they been?
Well, quite a bit, because I had to quit school. I was hospitalized when I had the LSD experience, but that wasn't the end of it. I had to go through 6.5 months of psychotherapy. I was referred to a psychiatrist the next week.
1953, my father, Harold Blauer, died. At the time, his family was told that he died after receiving an overdose of a drug being given to him for diagnostic and/or therapeutic purposes. Now, the Department of Army has informed me that my father was a victim of a drug test program administered by the New York State Psychiatric Institute under an Army contract. Not only is there no record of permission from my father to administer experimental drugs, but they were apparently forced upon him. I quote from the record, "First day, first injection, first comment. Very apprehensive, considerable persuasion required." Anyone who's been around mental institutions can tell you that means my father was tied or held down. And prior to the third injection, my father pleaded, "Why do you do this?"
Well, are we talking about psychotropic drugs or psychomimetic drugs?
All right. Any kind of drugs that are used in any behavioral research.
Describable of where I have contemplated taking my own life.
Did you ever have those prior to the time that you took this drug, or?
No, sir. I can honestly state I had never had any experiences such as this.
He came out and spent, I think, 3 days with me in a kind of a resort hotel on Long Island for Christmas.
So naive to believe that we're going to be able to, with the passage of any kind of legislation, eliminate the ills of a society. But what we can do is, to the best extent that, as legislators, that we are able to do, is to set up the kinds of protections for our citizens, which I think, as all of this panel would understand, all of us here, and I think I speak without exception for the members of the Senate and Congress, feel that every American's entitled to.
I think it's been a particularly revealing morning of testimony. I think the chairman is to be thanked for having taken the leadership in scheduling this hearing and bringing this whole question to the kind of focus that it has come today.
The awareness of MKUltra came about by those who would survive such ordeals and the families of those who would not. We shall not focus on the trauma of the events that unfolded, only to recapitulate those experiences and wash ourselves clean through the process of healing that works best for each individual. In the very near future, we will undoubtedly see more people coming forward, claiming to be a part of some endeavor they never consented to be a participant in. As the memories return, we will be able to slowly piece together those who are involved, perpetrators, and victims. And perhaps within that recollection, we will remember how to restore the balance within ourselves and come to an understanding that our time in such projects was only one facet of the greater whole, the larger picture of who we truly are.
We know just in the intelligence community, just from rumors, from one intelligence agency to another, which is one of the ways that intelligence people use to stay alive, basically, is by listening to each other's rumors about what supposedly is going on. And at the same time, whoever's giving the rumors can't be charged with giving out any secrets at all. So we would do that on a regular basis. And Montauk experiments were something that I heard about very commonly, and I heard about what was going on with them and who all was involved with them. And it just really seemed like massive projects that were going on there. And it definitely would have to be done in underground labs.